Everybody. So we are joined by John and Reza. I don't know how many people are already tapped in with both of them, but they're absolutely incredible. First, let's talk Reza. So Reza's our fearless leader at Motion. He's the engine that makes this thing go. Someone I respect so deeply. So excited for him to be able to share everything AI related, and obviously everything and how it applies to the creative strategy side. And then on John's end, John, we've had a chance to get to know each other even more and more over the past couple of weeks, and always been super impressed. So John is the CEO of three companies, so Ready, Set, Sleepless, and Airpost, and he can share some words, of course, about what they do. But for context, he was the global marketing lead at Airbnb as they were taking off, and in his early days, started on the agency side doing national TV ads. So all of this prepared him to really take off and own the world, in a sense, when we're thinking about Ready, Set, Sleepless, and Airpost. So everybody, again, if we can in the chat, let's welcome them. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time.
Thanks, Evan.
Most definitely. So we definitely want to get into the meat and potatoes and a mixture of high level and tactical. And I'm thinking that the best way that we can set the stage, guys, is just by giving a peek into your brains. So what I'm thinking is, for our very first question, Reza, I'm going to throw it to you first, and then John, I'll come to you after. But in this world that we're currently operating, how do you view AI and how it's going to impact advertising and just in general, with where your head's at?
Very cool. Thanks, Evan. Hi, everybody. Very excited to be here. Very excited to talk about this. I think it's one of the fun topics to talk about if you're in the creative world. I think this is one of the industries that it's so obvious that AI is going to impact our world in such a big way. I think anybody who is in any way connected to the creative world understands that. And there's just this big question of like how, when, at what pace is my job going away? Like there's all these questions that come up, and I think just naturally everyone in the creative world like deeply understands that. And I think we saw at the poll, people are already starting to interact with AI products. So like we're certainly out of the phase of theory and like conceptual and like maybe one day this is going to be real. Like it's real today. It feels very much like that. And so the question is like, where does it go, at what pace, and how do we think about that? One of the things that's helped me quite a bit is I try to wrap my head around like what's going on here, how's it going to impact our industry, and how do we help support our customers and in general like make the most out of this new wave of technology. Is basically this idea that any major technology wave, in my opinion, you can think about it as it's either a massive revenue generation unlock. So you could think of, for example, like the internet itself, or maybe a more practical example is like, think of Google search. Like Google search came out, and for merchants and advertisers, like there's a massive revenue generating opportunity with that technology. And in the case of AI, I think oftentimes that's where our heads go. Like, can AI make the best, coolest, like top performing ads? And I think there's something there. I really do. But I think the most interesting way to think about AI is a dramatic, like orders of magnitude cost reduction. So this ability to add massive leverage to your workflow. So I personally don't think about AI as a revenue generating technology. I view it as like something that allows you to eventually scale your operations in a way that reduces the costs massively, to a point where I think it's probably not an exaggeration to say that the cost of producing new creative assets is probably on a downward trajectory to zero. That at some point in the future, you can produce new, like an infinite amount of creatives for a very, very low cost. And I think that's like that's the ultimate trajectory. And so the question becomes, how do you start to think about AI as a workflow enhancement, as a way to, we have a current workflow, how do we accelerate it? How do we do a lot more of what we currently want to do faster, better, at a much bigger scale, versus what I think sometimes might come to mind is, are we going to be able to just plug AI and produce the best performing creatives and just magically this becomes a revenue opportunity? I don't believe that's the case. I think it's more of a dramatic cost reduction. And I don't know, be curious to hear what people think in the chats and the Q&A later, but that's helped me personally quite a bit as like a mental model to think about like, where does this technology wave fit and how do I make the most of it?
Super interesting, Reza. Like setting up the framework of cost saving versus like revenue driver. It's quite interesting. So like John, throwing it to you, curious to know how you view the world and where you think it's going, especially related to advertising.
Yeah, just dovetailing off of what you said, Reza, I think it's a phased thing. So you're absolutely right. Right now, in the short term, and it is very, very early. I can't emphasize that enough. Even with all the hype and articles out there, the ratio of that to how much it's being used and just how early it is massive. Um, it's a cost saving opportunity. It's a time saving opportunity. My goal in this webinar is to offer as much value as I can to each of you on this call, growth marketers, creative strategists that are looking just for something actually useful in AI that can save you time, so you can get to the higher order parts of your brain and more creative things you've been wanting to do. I think long term, it is a not just a margin generating opportunity, but a revenue generating opportunity in this way for our world of performance marketing, which is it will eventually be possible to build the whole loop. And we just got a patent on this from 2022, where you can automatically make a video ad, for example, make a UGC ad. Sometimes in our product meetings, we joke it's a race to the bottom and we're going to win it in terms of cost. So I agree with you there. But if you can have the whole loop where you're learning what's working, what's not, and AI is pretty conversational. It understands what's in the video ad, or it will soon. I can show you some advancements on that just in the last week. It can start to really be a huge lever on the wall for everybody in this webinar to be more successful writ large and generate more revenue.
Incredible.
Yeah, and John, you and I talked about this early on, and it's like this. And I agree with you. Once you start to see that flywheel develop, there's an arbitrage opportunity where the people who are early can like maximize the opportunities before everybody else. But at some point, and we talked about this, like once technology spreads to a far enough audience and like everybody has access to it, then in some sense it's like the edge is gone, and it's super fascinating. We were on our company retreat talking about this late last year, that in some sense, ever since the beginning of advertising, it's always like, how do you find an edge against everybody else who's trying to like compete for attention with your audience? And then it's almost like once an edge is found, then growth marketers, being as savvy as they are, exploit the crap out of that edge until like the edge is gone. And kind of saw this, like we talked about this early on too, about Facebook ads. Just think about Facebook ads itself. Like early on, it was this like wonderful arbitrage opportunity for people who were early. Later on, it's like, okay, now we're in the expert mode. It's not as easy as it used to be. Throw a couple of ads up and you have like a cash printer. And the question is like, how long is that trajectory for AI? Could be a very long time. Could be a decade, right, of like early arbitrage opportunity. I think that's like, it's cool to think about just from like a nerdy, what is the future going to look like? But from an actionable standpoint, I think everybody in this room and people in our industry, it makes a lot of sense to try to be as early as possible in what's going on here. Because I think there is an edge because it's not widely adopted, but it's like every day that passes, that edge starts to go away. And so, make the most out of it, everybody, before it's widespread.
Yeah. And I think if you're on this call, then you're on the edge, which is great. And I agree with you. I think this one will be long. If you are in advertising and you recognize the potential power of the internet and programmatic and Google in 1999, you had a many-year head start on traditional companies as a marketer. And a lot of those marketers became, the CMOs of those eras. And like you said, if you are on Facebook and you realized when you showed up to a new job in 2012, 13, 17, whoa, we should be spending way more on this platform, getting like 4x ROAS easy, then you were ahead of the game. And both of those lasted like a decade. It wasn't until the last couple of years that latter, window is closed. And this one is so huge, and it's so early. And frankly, there's so few people that I meet that are actually using this technology today that like we've barely begun.
It's so interesting. And I think like a lot of the examples we're going to talk today are going to uncover how this can happen almost immediately with some of the new tools that are out there. But then even as time goes on, the advancements we can almost see and I don't know if we can predict it exactly, but we can
Yeah.
see where it's going.
Evan, can I share with you kind of where we're at? Because this past week has been probably the biggest AI news
100%.
since ChatGPT.
It's perfect timing. There's a comment that came in the chat too that was asking about tools like Sora, OpenAI, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. You guys are gonna find this hilarious. My mouse. There you go. Okay, my mouse quit on me, but it's back. All right, let me present my screen. That was great. Ba, 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 ba. So you may have heard about Sora. Sora, S-O-R-A. This is their research paper that just came out more recently about how it works. Is really the biggest leap forward, I think, since GPT-4 came out, since ChatGPT came out. I'll just do this while I talk. These are hyper realistic. Just last week, I was using Runway, which is another video generation tool, to bring life to images, to generate things, and it was pretty awful. It looked like all people looked like the evil people in Devil's Advocate. Like, it just wasn't usable in any respect. And I think that's the problem with a lot of AI. You all have probably tried out. It's like cool, but not really usable. I'm not going to put it in my ad set today. I think you can see here pretty clearly this is a little bit different. So it's just very, very real. Now, this is on their website. So maybe they vetted these, maybe they cherry picked these. That's why I really like this one that I'm going to show you, which is this prompt: a computer hacker Labrador retriever wearing a black hooded sweatshirt sitting in front of the computer with the glare of the screen emanating on the dog's face as he types very quickly. And this was something someone just posted on Twitter and said, go make this right now. And this is what Sora made. Oh. Like, looking at this, I just feel like I'm watching a video. Like someone grabbed their iPhone and took a thing of their dog, hacking into a mainframe.
It's actually unbelievable. I have a question for you here on this, John, as we talk through these, like thinking through like the immediate actionable stuff. I heard a bunch of people kind of reacting to this, and I'm curious if you agree or not, that like one of the immediate use cases, and obviously Sora is ridiculous. I imagine if anybody has not seen it before this call, like your mind will be blown like everybody else's was. Like Sora is just, it's unbelievable how amazing that is. It seems like the immediate use case there probably fits into something like B-roll for videos. Do you agree with that? Like as like the immediate most actionable thing for people in our space, like what can I use Sora for tomorrow? Seems like the most incredible thing for B-roll. Like A, do you agree with that? B, any insight on how copyrights work with something like that? Can someone just go to Sora, produce stuff and like pop it into an ad, or is there like copyright questions? Curious if you know about that.
Yeah. Taking the first one, you just went right to the heart of, we work with this stuff every day, and that's where we kept ending up, which is cool, but product. Like 80% of most video ads that perform show the product, show people unboxing it, show it being used, right? You can see, like, I'm basically blinded now to all the Twitter demos or whatever, any startup showing their Gen AI magical unicorn dancing on the moon. Like, none of us on this call need a magical unicorn dancing on the moon. We need to see an unboxing shot or some B-roll. I think that there are a subset of ads where that B-roll can be really helpful. It can definitely be filler. And I think it is where we're going. So I'll take the opportunity to share something else with you real quick, because this is now more medium long-term. This is a TV commercial, a real TV commercial. And I watched, like, I'm cursed with the fact that I just watch TV this way now. Whereas watch each of these shots. I won't play the whole thing. And we added prompts to each one based on what you just saw with Sora. You can see that you're going to be able to make this stuff pretty easily. This is where we are going. This commercial, surely, this is my old industry, like traditional TV commercials, easily cost $500K plus to make. You'll be able to make something like this with prompts very soon.
I've seen it all at least once or twice.
Wait, John, can you hit pause for a second?
Yeah.
So is this a video, and then what your team has done has basically tried to write up a prompt that would recreate the scene that we're looking at as we watch the video?
That's exactly right. Thank you for clarifying it.
Okay.
That's exactly right. It's just to show that
Right.
there's like, I watch guys TV shot by shot, and I'm like, can do it, can do it, can do it. Yep, that's can be AI. That can be AI. You know what I mean? Like, but if you want a product in a shot, honestly, guys, like things are a lot less ripe right now. I'll show you a couple where we've done it. So this is a client of ours called Birdies. This is an image from their website of a woman wearing the shoes. We wanted a video clip. So we put it into Runway and animated it. It's okay. It's not great, right? You can't get much movement. It's always slow motion.
And it starts from
another product
that
shot.
photo that we saw. That photo that we saw was an image that you uploaded into.
Yeah, it's an image.
Runway.
Literally,
so you're generating movement.
Exactly.
Okay.
I grabbed it from their website and just said, make this a video, because we're
Right.
building our own software product that can automatically make these whole ads out of the 300,000 video clips that we own and product footage. The end product footage part is the hardest part, right? So we're playing with like, how do you actually, and everybody in this call is probably wondering like, okay, how do I get this video and not just people walking, and gardening that I can use in ads? And the best thing we have right now is probably something like Runway to bring life to an image. I think when Sora gets publicly released, probably a month or 3 from now, it'll be really good. And instead of 4 seconds, it's 60 seconds. And you could just have DoorDash is a client of ours. You could have a Dasher on a bike going fast and turn it into a mini movie that you could use as an ad.
So one of the things so now we're kind of in speculation land of like, what is the tool set going to look like? You mentioned you guys are working on something. And one of the things I've thought about here, curious your perspective too, is you basically have a lot of really interesting generative AI companies. You take like, for example, even OpenAI, people that are in the business of like producing content through prompts. And then you have the whole world of like all the video editing software. And like, what are they going to do? I know Adobe's got like 1 foot in, 1 foot out to like each. And so one thing I've been really interested in thinking about is what is the intersection between video editing software and generative AI? Because it seems unlikely to me that there's going to be something that comes out of a generative AI product that is just ready to go live, right? And so probably goes into video editing as a next step. Like, is that how you see it? It's like
100%.
Video editors, you then start to feed some kind of like, you had a term for this early on when we spoke, maybe you're showing a demo later as well, but this kind of like draft starting point that gets generated by AI, and then you're kind of putting the finishing touches to it in editing software.
Yeah, I think what we're learning is that you have to control the inputs and the outputs. So you all have heard of a lot of, and we can talk about them in the chat or in the Q&A, a lot of software out there that says, we will make an ad for you. We have templates that we'll plug in. It's usually just images and fancy transitions, because they don't control the inputs. I've talked to people from those companies. They're like, we get crappy inputs from our, people that are just checking it out and it doesn't work. So what we have learned is you do need to have the right footage to put into it. And then auto editing, TikTok came out with auto cut recently. Some of the bigger guys are coming out with some of these things to try to help people make ads more quickly, is really non-trivial technology. Like editors are really valuable. A good performance video editor who knows how to, keep a cadence going and that kind of thing is hard to find. I think you and I both agree, Reza, by the way, for everybody's sake, this is not going to replace any of us on this call. It's a huge lever that all of us can use. It's a massive tool set to do our jobs.
I love that. And Evan, I feel like you have this on your list, but there was a bunch of stuff, John, you were showing us before that I think is like immediately actionable for people. That I think some of the video stuff, it's still like we can see it. We're almost there. It's really close. But some of the things around like the custom GPT you showed us and like generating scripts, like a lot of those things feel like they are immediately actionable right now. So wonder if
let's do 2 demos.
Some of that.
Reza and I talked before. We don't want to talk at you, I'd rather show you stuff. And so I'm going to stick with video for one. You mentioned we call it First Draft Assistant. This is just an internal tech that we built, but we're not the only ones doing this. This is coming out. I'm going to get one of these demos going for you guys, just to show you, to your question of automatic editing. And there's cloud-based editors like Descript, things like that. They're mostly focused on podcasts and YouTube videos and cleaning those up by editing, adjusting the text in the script. I'm going to make an ad on this webinar with you guys, and then I'm going to show you what Reza was referring to regarding like a custom GPT to have sort of a right hand at work helping you with this. All right, Scentbird is a client of ours. It's like a monthly set of perfumes. I just filled this in, 2 ads, et cetera, et cetera. How about 3 reasons why ad, I'm going to keep it super simple, that ends with her saying, use code motion for free shipping. All right, while that bakes, and it won't take long, let's talk about custom GPTs. If you go to this link, and we'll put it in the chat, I'll tell you a little bit about what a custom GPT is and why it could be useful, but it's very easy to build. It's essentially your own custom agent, your own custom assistant in your work. So let's say you're on this call and you're a creative strategist. I made one here for some folks we work with, Proven Skincare. And it just asks you a series of questions. I think I filled one out here pretending I was a Casper. It says, hey, I'll help you build a new GPT. Again, you're literally building like an intern to sit next to you and help you with stuff to help get you higher leverage. And let me show you how it works. So hang on, where'd it go? So I said to it, this is one way you could use a custom GPT today to make an ad. Instead of looking at that white bull, as Hemingway called it, of the blinking cursor on Google Docs, trying to come up with your next concept, just go and, turn to your intern here and say, cool, here's a hit ad that I saw for Keeps. Make an ad for Proven using a very similar framework. And in this case, I did this myself. I just hyper tagged everything, every shot, every voiceover mention, every graphic, every highlight of the graphic, and then asked it to make one for Proven. So zoom in on a balding bearded man looking slightly sad. Top 5 reasons why guys stop hair loss with Keeps. Highlighted stop hair loss, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then let's see how they start the Proven one. So for whatever reasons, that did well. Slow zoom in on a still photo of a young woman looking concerned about her skin. 5 reasons why more women achieve flawless skin with Proven. Before the words achieve flawless skin are highlighted, you get the idea. You can read this whole thing, and it's citing different stats that are relevant to Proven. If we have time at the end, which we probably won't, our team actually, I could show you that Keeps ad, and I could show you the Proven ad that it was generated based on that. But that's how a custom GPT can help you. Back to our ad, motion webinar test. Download it. Don't be scared. And then what this has done, guys, is it's taken a bunch of vertical UGC video and it has taken that script, made a voiceover out of it, using one of these 11 labs or whatnot, and made an ad. And you called it, Reza. It's a first draft assistant. It is not a final thing that's going to work. I have no idea how this is going to sound. Let me grab a music track. Give me a second. All right. I'm doing this on purpose live with you guys because I just feel like there's so much AI stuff out there that's like the perfect cherry-picked demo. And this is not going to be perfect. Look, this screen is too small, but let's watch.
Personalize your fragrance journey. A new signature scent every month. Add luxury to your routine. Unbox a scent surprise. Spray on confidence. Scentbird fits your style.
Artlist
Choose,
IO.
receive, and enjoy. Use code motion for free shipping.
So no one's going to run that as is, as you said, but it's close. And any editor can clean that up in Premiere in 4 minutes and move on to their next.
So was that taking raw footage of different like photos and clips and like putting it together with the text over and the audio over?
So what that was doing visually, yes. So the really cool thing that did that I take for granted is decide when to make those cuts, because that's all raw footage that we have, right? And to be fair, in this case, we have shot footage for Scentbird. So they may, you may have a client, if you're an agency person, that doesn't have a lot of good footage, right? Or frankly, even if they have footage, controlling the inputs is a big reason why that worked. And our company's a production machine. We're shooting hundreds of things a week in our studio, so we're able to do that. And then combining it with the other shots of her, on a walk, or lifestyle footage, B-roll as you called it, and then laying the music down, laying the VO down, and then all of the different frameworks out there. Like, as everyone on this call who works in performance marketing knows, we have thousands of these frameworks. I picked, reasons why, but there's an endless amount of stuff you could do. And you just instruct it and it goes. So that's what's happening there, but it's not there yet. But I just wanted to share it with everybody because I think that's where we are headed.
I think you can see it. I think like you can appreciate that it's not quite there, but like it's so obvious that like with time we're getting there, and so that's super cool. I wonder if we can bring back the custom GPT. Somebody was asking about prompts, and I think it might be useful to talk a little bit about some of the principles behind prompts, so that, because often I see this, like someone talks online about AI and like a cool prompt that they've done, and
Yep.
people immediately where their head goes like, hey, can I get those prompts? Can I use those? And I feel like in the spirit of like, teach people how to fish, let's talk a little bit about what makes a good prompt for people who want to play around with this on their own, and just like some principles people can walk away with, of like not being afraid to tinker with their own prompts versus, hey, I need something, a template that somebody else is using to get this to work for me.
Not being afraid to play around is the perfect way to put it. There's no right way, but there are some principles. So whether you're prompting, Mid-Journey for an image, or Runway to animate something a certain way, or a script, because you guys are going to quickly see here, if you haven't already, write me a TikTok ad for my brand. It's going to be really cheesy and generic. So it is an art form right now. Context is a big one. Understanding who you are, who you're not. Compliance is one that I like to do. It's really, I guess, the more you think of prompting like talking to a friend, and then you ask yourself, if I said this to my friend, could he go off and make the ad that I'm picturing I want? The answer for me is usually no, and I have to add context and clarity. But I say play around because sometimes you can just say something very broad, and it comes up with something really cool. There's different buckets. Let's see, context, clarity, look, especially if you're talking about imagery and video. Midjourney just came out with seeding recently, by the way. So if you want like, no, I want that guy that I just generated yesterday, you can pull out, we don't have time to go into it now, but like a seed number and say, reference that seed. There's a whole universe of people online, cheat sheets, etc. on this. I would say, lastly, it is quite specific to each platform: images, video, chat, and just experiment. Don't feel like you're doing it wrong. As long as you're giving the thing clarity and context like you would a friend, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, and you covered this in your custom GPT, and I think you mentioned this, but like basically the difference between just going to Chat GPT and like talking to it and feeding it context is that if you create your own custom GPT, then it like remembers that context for future, so you don't have to keep like, hey, let me tell you like the 50 things that you need to know, and then so that I can ask you my question. It now remembers that, so that every time you go to it, you're now just like asking it to produce the thing, and you're not repeating all of the context that you fed it the first time.
Exactly. I think, honestly, I'll speak for myself. Like, prompting and working with AI can be exhausting. And after you've like written your fourth mini paragraph, okay, do I have the content? It's like you go on to something else. Building a custom GPT is like massively pre-prompting this thing to understand your brand, all the latest updates that the lawyer, said that, the thing needs to remember to get right. Memory was just introduced into ChatGPT recently. So that's huge. And then there are ways to actually put lots of data into it. If you want to invest in this thing, you could load in, here are all the scripts with visual descriptions, et cetera, of my top 11 performing ads this last year. And here's 100 that didn't work. Reference these each time you come back with an answer. So it can be really powerful, but like anything, it takes investment. If you feel like, well, I tried AI once, I made a script and, it didn't work. It's like anything. You got to kind of really invest in it and try it more deeply and get good at it.
I think the thing that you just mentioned there is it's such a good hack. I've heard of a number of people doing this where you basically feed it context on the top performing ads as much as you can. I think the more the AI knows about the things that work, like they just get so much smarter when they have the right context. I've seen people do that. Another one that's come up, I'm sure many people have heard about this by now, but for the people who haven't, another one that's quite common is exporting all of your product reviews or ad comments for just like additional context. Like, here's what people are saying about my product or my brand. Here are the things they like about it, what they don't like. Because often,
Yes.
even pre AI world, a lot of the best creative strategists were like mining reviews, right, to try to understand like what are the pain points or things that people are bringing up, and using that same language as part of their ad briefs and their scripts. And so that's another really cool piece of context that you can feed into the prompts along with like the performance data. And then now like this thing has a lot of awareness on what might be good, and then it might generate some scripts or briefs that, in the same example of like John showed about the video, maybe it's not quite there, but like certainly better than staring at a blank screen trying to think about like the 50 assets that you need to produce next week. So I think it's a fantastic kickoff point, if nothing
Yeah, and you
else at this
mentioned,
point. And
tactical,
so
like what can I do now? Like I will be really sad if we leave this webinar without just as many things possible for you guys to go
good.
look into. So I'm sharing here something called GigaBrain. It's a way. I just put good reviews of Casper, right? If you worked at Casper, it's a way to just kind of pull out from the bajillions of posts on Reddit, reviews, what people are saying. You can use those in ads. There's something called someone's built a landing page optimizer GPT. So I took the Stitch Fix page. I noticed a lot of their Facebook ads point to stitchfix.com/women. And we'll put all these links in the chat. You go to this GPT, and I just typed in stitchfix.com/women. And it's like, cool, we suggest that you change the image and text. Here's why. This lacks visual appeal. Another time it mentioned that the image was kind of busy, which I agree with. It has more performance-oriented calls to action. So, these are all ways to use AI now. Because I think the biggest problem that makes even me cynical at times is, again, that gulf between the hype and the umpteenth, TechCrunch article and fundraise news, and like, yeah, but I want to like find it useful. So I want to give you some
the other point here too is that everybody in this community is like, we are in the business of like hyper performance, like direct response advertising. It's a very different beast than like, some people who might be using this to produce like product shots for a website, right? Like an e-commerce page, you have like 100 product shots to do, or you're writing like copy description for your products on a product page, like things that aren't like ultra performance, like you're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars like media spend per month behind some of these. So I think like we are probably the industry where like there's going to be some humans on the reins, just because like there's so much at stake, like there's so much budget at stake, upside at stake in like high performance advertising versus like something a little bit more low stakes, like product shots on an e-commerce page, or things like that. So
it is quantifiable. It is hard to be a growth marketing leader. Like every meeting with your boss, you're looking at numbers together, and your goal is to get those numbers to be better. I think long term, where this is going is, as you allude to, where it's helping get a head start on the creative side. It's getting the analytics side. We didn't have time to talk about how AI is helping with analytics and understanding different elements of ads. Gemini 1.5 just came out from Google, which is a huge leap forward in computer vision, not only understanding what's on a screen, man, car, but like actions that are happening, which is important for tagging images and videos, which is what makes them what I call AI ready, so that you can do these kinds of things. But when you pull the whole stew together and build it into this, performance creative flywheel, it's never going to operate purely on its own. But I do think that that's where things are headed. So that's why I'm really excited about the work you guys are doing at Motion, because I think you're leading in analytics, and we're just working really hard to make that world happen with AI-driven creative.
Yeah, we think about this all the time. Like there's a role for us to play here, and we think about it a lot, trying to not rush something out. So I think in the last like 12 months, you've seen people, like a lot of SaaS companies, like, all right, what's our AI release? And like for the sake of some kind of marketing announcement, like push something out, and it's not quite there. And so we're taking our time, but I think the data set that Motion sits on, there's something really fascinating about how we can use that to help people just come up with new ideas. And so, yeah, definitely thinking about it, and more to come here. Definitely an area that
Yeah,
we'll
and for
build stuff.
those, yeah, I'm really excited about that and what you guys are building. I'm rooting for the API, as you know, so we can connect. But for those of you who may be feeling like this is cool, this is great, some interesting stuff there, just the pure overhead might feel like a lot. I get it. Like I mentioned, even one by one prompting stuff can be a lot, and then you just got your day job of the way you've been doing it. So it can be a hard leap to make. We have a digital agency that's working, the way they're working. They're more working the old school way. But Sleepless, that Evan you mentioned, Sleepless.ai, that's why we built that thing, which is like performance marketing team specifically, as you said, Reza. It's a very different thing than a brand team. They want to use these tools. They want to make more ads more quickly. They want more bites of the apple, and not just iterations in light blue, dark blue, but like net new concepts quickly. And AI is a huge lever for that. But hopefully this was helpful today. But it's a lot to manage. So we're like, it just needs to be a service that lets people kind of get this done cheap without having to learn it all themselves overnight.
I think the last thing that I'm curious about is, as soon as we show an example, jokingly or not, everyone's like, well, we don't have jobs anymore. Thank you for that. So we have a wide audience with us today, right? Like we have creative team members, creative strategists, media buyers, growth leaders, everyone across the board. So what I'm quite curious about is like all of this is cool and it can help inspire what to do. But are there specific roles that should be focused on specific things? Like that's kind of where my head goes. So John, I'm going to throw that to you first, and comment on roles and workflow if possible.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest, most obvious one is if you are a creative strategist and you're looking at that white screen every Monday, try some of these things out to just get you to work faster, to help you brainstorm. Ironically, like Sam Altman has said, no one thought AI would first help in the more creative professions. They thought it would help in the most, sort of prosaic things, and then move its way up. And it started the opposite direction. And it will definitely not replace your job, by the way. It definitely won't, but it can make it a lot easier. So using some of these tools that we showed today, just even using ChatGPT to help you come up with different angles in for your products, right? Here's the 10 things that we're always doing for our product. Give me 10 more that don't touch these. That's what I'd say there. The analytics side's a little further out, mainly because these products are not so awesome at math yet, but they're getting better really quickly. We have played around with, as you mentioned, Reza, right? Describing in great detail hundreds of high-performing ads, talking to the model conversationally about what might work for a certain client. But I would say even that's not there yet. But if I were in analytics, if I were a media buyer, I'd be keeping my eye on that. And then, of course, the big companies are doing a lot of this work for us, both on the what ad runs where algorithms and creative production. Definitely images, like Facebook's already come out with something. They're helping there.
Cool. And then I want to jump to Q&A, so everyone keep actually upvoting, throwing your questions in there. But Reza, maybe I'll throw the same question to you too. From a role and workflow perspective, is there anywhere in particular people should be focused on?
Yeah, well, I think everyone in our community knows how much we champion the creative strategy function and the creative strategist role. I think all of this conversation just puts even more emphasis on how critical that role is, in my opinion. The way we've always thought about it is like, you have the distribution side, so you have to like run the ad somewhere, right? And you have to like create campaigns and like target people. And then on the other side, you have the creation. And we've already seen the distribution side kind of get gobbled up by AI already. We actually don't talk about this a lot, but like the algorithm that everybody trusts now with Facebook, and like no one really goes and like tinkers with specific targeting. I remember a few years ago, like that was very, very common. These days, it's like make it broad, let the creative do the targeting. And so like you can think about the distribution side as being like relatively commoditized. If we're seeing the same trend on the creation side, that like there's not a ton of value to create as an individual on the creation side, and like the cost there is plummeting down to zero, then in my opinion, it leaves like all of the work in the middle, in between the distribution side and the creation, which we've always been calling as creative strategy, that's where, you know, humans get to earn their keeps, in my opinion. Everything from like the research, the analytics, the planning, the briefing, everything that goes in between those two worlds. And I think AI fits like squarely into that workflow. It also does on the actual creation side, but I think the person who picks up, I think the right person to pick up prompting on the creative team is probably the creative strategist. Is like that's the role to pick it up. I mean, that's the role that's doing the briefing and the planning anyway. And so I think the chief AI officer on the team should be the creative strategist. And so like all the more reason that like I think it's an epic role. I think it's a great time to be a creative strategist, and the wins are on your side if
And
you're
it's
in that
even
role.
more in demand. Like I have a friend who he's like, he got the job. He's interviewing to lead creative at a company that spends like 5 million a month on Facebook. And he said the CEO was determined that this be somebody who had embraced AI, and like they didn't, but they were going to give him like a job title that had AI in it or something like that for creative. You know, and they're a very progressive company that's doing really well, direct to consumer company. So I feel like soon, if it's not now, with a lot of companies, they're going to be looking at their next head of creative strategy as somebody who really gets what this next epoch looks like. Just as you'd want someone who understood Facebook marketing in 2012 or somebody who understood internet advertising in 1998.
Love it.
Like
Okay,
that.
so we have questions building up here. So we have to give the people what they want. We have 11 minutes left, folks. So again, keep upvoting, throwing those questions into our Q&A tab. And the most upvoted question that we're seeing right now, John, I'm going to throw it to you. It's from Meredith. Meredith, hey, how are you doing? How do you use AI legally in ads? Clients are concerned that they could get copywriting flags if the generator pulled from something existing.
Yeah, the onus on this really goes to the client side right now. Calling it a gray area or fuzzy is an understatement. There are so many cases in so many courts. You know, one of the bigger ones being the New York Times versus OpenAI. Reddit just did a deal with Google for 60 million to give them all of their information, I believe. So there's no one answer to this. It's really up to the risk profile of the client, risk tolerance of the client. So, you know, think of the company that you've worked at, or if you've been an agency worked with, that's like, oh, we don't care. We put, you know, Forbes headlines and, you know, whatever in there. Many celebrities will throw them in there if they said something nice online. We make an ad out of it. And, you know, the cowboy side, I call it. And then think of the people that are like, oh, no. Like, we definitely cannot do anything within 100 miles of that. There's nothing any of us on this call could probably change about the latter group. In total respect, like they've got big businesses to maintain and want to be super safe. I will say that Adobe and I believe OpenAI now, and a lot of these guys have put protections in place that if you are sued for using their stuff, Adobe was the first, they will fund a defense. I don't see many, you know, when you're talking to a client or your boss at your brand, I don't see many of these suits coming about today. You don't hear about, oh my God, this brand used this image and now they're in big trouble. Maybe because it's so fuzzy and the prosecution side wouldn't know if they'd win either. But yeah, it's really on the client.
So interesting. Okay, John, I have another one for you. Reza, feel free to jump in if you have anything to add here. But it's from Olivia. How do we know that the AI we are using is unique? E.g., what if a competitor is asking for a similar prompt? What does that mean to brand identity?
Yeah, this is a fascinating question, Olivia. And it's one I'm talking to a lot of people about. And it's a continuum again. And there's no one answer for it. I think it's just a great question that you raise. On one end, it's, hold on, like we have a very specific brand. Like that first draft assistant, you know, where you could just take this sort of avatar of real footage of real people, make a VO, and, you know, make an ad. What if, you know, someone else uses that same actor or some of the same prompting with some of the same language? For me, you can imagine which side of the continuum I'm on, and I'm a like recovering brand guy. Like I worked at Airbnb for 3 years, and yet I just think people don't care that much. It depends. I don't think Nike wants to just blow up their brand with a bunch of ugly ads and the same actor, you know, everywhere. But growing up, you'd be like, oh, I've seen that guy in a toothpaste commercial, and now he's in this shaving commercial, an AT&T ad. Like, I don't think people care about that so much. The internet world is way more fragmented. You're not seeing all the same ads over and over again. And, you know, yeah, it ought to be tasteful. It ought to be a unique ad. It ought to work. But as a brand guy who gets it, and I respect brand a ton, I think that argument against this wholesale, not that you're making it, will go down over time.
I think it's another argument. It's a reason why humans will not be removed from the equation. Like that's a very specific question that a human should make a call on, and we're not going to be in a world where like humans step out and there's this like automated, loop of performance data ingestion, new creative production, and like launched onto the platforms. I think that's kind of where the humans fit to make a lot of those judgment calls. And I don't know if there's going to be like a perfect way to understand if someone's done it, but you might look at that and say like, no, this feels like a little bit too played out. I've seen this on social already. I might do something different, like maybe not too different than what you might do today. Even if it's not AI, a lot of people are using the same kinds of tactics. Like, and as a brand, you might decide whether you want to try the same thing, you want to try something different. So I imagine those principles will still apply, and why some humans will still have some jobs to just like do the final check of the box of what the AI spits out.
And something I've heard you both say is honestly the quality of the inputs. So if we start and say one single prompt and we ask the exact same prompt as a separate brand, maybe there's going to be some overlap, right? But if we're feeding it the reviews, the comments, and everything else that both Reza and John have spoken about, hopefully that impacts the output. You might have the same goal, but the look and feel will be different because of the quality of those inputs.
Yeah, that's a great point. The way it fundamentally works, I haven't seen a lot of same stuff. Maybe it's, that's the 3 reasons why, so is this. And as Reza said, like, yeah, tactics get played out generally, right? It's like the white bar ads of 2017 or the man on the street ads now. It's like everything comes in phases and everyone does it when they see everyone else doing it. But I don't think, fundamental to how AI works, I don't think it's going to make a lot of copycat stuff.
Well, one of the things I want to toss out, we didn't talk about this, but I've felt for a while that we're going to start to see, how like a lot of, you see influencers in creative, and like they play a role in the production of like, who do you bring into your content? I actually feel like we're probably going to see AI influencers and like actual personalities, and like you might be able to license an AI model to use that individual person who's come to be like known, or for whatever reason is like better than other AI avatars at like, certain things. And so I think that whole world's going to be very interesting. And another question for our ecosystem is there's a lot of like content creators, like individuals who are like the faces of a lot of the ads that we see. Like what happens to them? Is there going to be a role for actual humans to be behind the iPhone, like shooting something, or is that done? That's to me a very fascinating question. I would like to think that if there's a way for consumers to tell the difference, that there's still like an appetite to see a real human in a video from time to time. But that's to me a very fascinating question too.
I mean, that is absolutely fascinating. And, there are like true AI influencers like Lil Michaela and things like that are generated. Our bet is real people, real footage, real product footage, plus AI to arrange it, to put the voiceover down of that person, right? To put the music and just to make it.
They don't have to do the same shots like 12 times for different like cuts or whatever. They can just outsource the work, but it's them. That's
but
great.
In terms of like the model of, I find influencer on influencer platform, I go talk to a creator, how much do you want, the back and forth, the PayPal, like the footage, the reshoots, all of that. What you saw with the first draft assistant is legally, contractually, and ethically, we like sat them down and make sure they're cool with this. Those are all actors, and we've got over 40 of them now that are like, yeah, I understand that you're going to use all these hundreds and hundreds of shots. We do these things called 360 shoots of me doing everything. I can't sleep, I'm sleeping well, all those things with any product, as long as it's not the gross ones, and make any ad without me having to like set aside my Saturday and shoot it again. So how those folks get paid? Do they get paid one lump sum for those rights? Does it come over time? That's like an era that we're not even there yet. Like we haven't even launched that thing yet. But I think that's probably what's coming. We sometimes compare it to like, 100 years ago, there were people shaping wood coffee tables, like in Craftsman, all of this. And none of us on this call 100 years ago, if it could have existed, would want to say, oh, they're going to replace, et cetera. But we're talking about building like a West Elm or a Crate and Barrel. It's like, but everyone could have access to that. Everyone who's going back to their work after this webinar being like, I need net new concepts. I need to take some big swings. That's expensive. That takes time. everyone will have access, like DoorDash and Hims do, to hundreds of big swings like that for a lot lower cost than there is now. Like, I think that's the world we're headed towards.
I threw up a question that's really aligned, and I feel like we can do an event just dedicated to this, like speaking about how the creative world changes. But I think that was a ton of good information. We probably have time for one more question, guys. So the one that I wanted to pull up here is actually talking about some of the pitfalls. So John has asked around best practices around getting some of these AI tools worked into creative strategy, operations, so on and so forth. But the piece that I wanted to highlight was the second part of it. So any headaches that anyone runs into. So John, I'll throw it to you first. Like, I'm curious, are there any pitfalls or where people get stuck essentially when they're getting started with AI that you can give them a heads up on so they can get ahead of it?
It's probably not what you all expect. I think it's when you get there, when you do the thing, when you invest a little time and you've got the ad, it's often just not quite good enough. I was just talking to another friend who has an AI legal tech company, and it's really binary, where it's either, oh, I can't wait to run that in an ad set, or not quite. And I'm guessing if you're like me, most of the stuff and most of the tools that most of us have built is a cool thing to show the person next to you, but it's not something you actually want to get a screenshot from the CEO. Like, WTF is this? So we're just not quite there with a lot of that stuff. And so that's kind of the latent pitfall. And then, like I mentioned earlier, just like, I think a lot of folks understandably are like, ugh, I tried to do it. I learned the thing. I watched the YouTube video. I used that and I tried to make an ad, but it wasn't 80%. It was 63%. And then I haven't done it in a few months. And that's totally understandable. But I think that's the hump a lot of folks have to get over as well. I can tell you, like, we've used AI to make ads that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. And once you have that happen, it changes yourself. It changes a lot of the people around you's excitement about the concept.
Amazing.
Quick thing I'll add there. I know we're a bit at time, but I just wanted to comment that this community, I think, is like cutting edge on cutting edge. And the reason I mention that is that creative strategy itself, forget about AI, is a very new workflow. Not a lot of people have like mastered their daily workflow and like how to get creative strategy right. And so my big advice on this would be like, AI can definitely be a lot of like shiny object syndrome and like, go and playing around with it for the sake of it. But if people invest in building out a really good creative strategy workflow, then the cases where AI can be really helpful will like be obvious and show itself, and it'll feel very natural. And so I think like go back to investing in a really good creative strategy workflow, and then let the pain point dictate where AI can be really helpful versus like feeling FOMO about, hey, I should go and like get all these different tools. I think invest in your process, and I think the pain will be clear and the solutions will be clear. So let that guide you is my opinion.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is, no matter how behind you might feel, like, you're already ahead. Like, if you're on this call and you understand these concepts and you have ambition to figure this out, you are way ahead of most people in our space.
John, Reza, absolutely smashed it, guys. Everyone who's still here, throw love into the chat, please, please, please. This has been an absolutely incredible session. I'm getting DMs saying how much everyone's enjoying it. So, guys, thank you so much for your brains. This has been absolutely incredible. Audience, you're the best. When we talk about our community, everybody pulling up, being able to add these questions in the chat, making it happen, we really, really appreciate your eyes and ears. We want to see you at the next one, and hope you all have enjoyed it. Okay? Thank you so much, everybody. Enjoy
Thanks,
the rest
Evan.
of your days.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, take care.